Good afternoon, councillors and council staff, members of our community and those who might be streaming in. It's a pleasure to be back here for the first sitting of our ordinary meetings for the year of 2025. And with that occasion, I would like to invite Pakana Elder Delia Summers to do our acknowledgement welcome to country in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mayor. Ya Palingana, hello and welcome. I acknowledge with heart country, sky country, saltwater country. My people are Pakana and my ancestors are the Trawulaway people from Cape Portland, northeast coast of Lutruwita, Tasmania. My home country where I grew up is Cape Barren Island, Trawana. I come from a strong line of Aboriginal people, Maynards, Mansells and Beatons. Today, as we meet on Aboriginal land, which the Launceston City Council sits, this is the country of the Leah Tamarana, Panaher and Tairana Tapana people. I honour and acknowledge them. Lutruwita, our land, our sea and our waterways. I welcome you all to Lutruwita, Tasmania. Warranta, Tanapri, Tanapri, Kuntani, Nari. Welcome, my friends, to the Lutruwita, Tasmania, Aboriginal land. We acknowledge with deep respect our old people, our traditional owners who once walked the old tracks through this country. I acknowledge elders and community, past and present. I would also like to pay my respects to those elders and community members who have recently passed. We know our ground is sacred and old. Our people have been here since time began. This ground holds our past, present and future within. We stand on country, it keeps us strong, our feet are planted here permanently, just as our spirit. We are always connected to country. Our country holds the knowledge of the old people. They have danced around many fires and held ceremonies. Their songs are in the land. They are still here, in the earth, in the trees, in the wind, and they will always be here as we are. I pay my respects and honour the ancestors, the traditional owners and sovereign people of Lutruwita, this island. All things within the landscape, all places, including sacred places. Mina Tanapi Pakana Nina. I pay tribute to and remember our old people connected to those places and country and the Tasmanian Aboriginal community who continues the legacy of our ancestors. It is the strength, determination and resilience of our elders that sustain us, our families and community. This year, the Elders Council look forward to working closely with Council, and we also look forward to seeing our Mayor and other Council members at our table for cultural lunches and gatherings again. I've had a look at the Council's Aboriginal Partnership Plan, Community Engagement Strategy, and your strong desire and responsibility to respond to the needs of Aboriginal people in the Launceston region. The inclusion of the 4 priority reforms from the National Closing the Gap Agreement will guide the Council in community control, shared decision-making, transformation and improved data collection. The plan's continuous improvement, building capacity and the communication through the loop to improve feedback and input methods and the Aboriginal community knowledges. The Council's work, Aboriginal community acknowledges the Council's work. The importance of culturally appropriate respect of Aboriginal community may strengthen our Palawak culture between council and community. This welcome will continue to strengthen our connections. With pride, I welcome you to country, Lutruwita. Ngari Nina Tu. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Elder Summers. You may be seated. In the opening of today's meeting as well, I would like to acknowledge Council Officer Colin James as a part of our community development team, who has arranged for 2 councillors, SELLORS, from Laurel House to attend and support people, if required, for any of the questions that might be raised through 8.1 or 8.2 as a part of today's agenda. And those councillors will be located in the Mayoress room and also in the lunchroom across from the council chambers. So thank you to Colin and the team for that initiative there as well. With those acknowledgements and being the first meeting of the year, there's a plethora of acknowledgements that we could make, but I'm going to work with the team on the appropriate and respectful way to ensure that they all get the gravity and respect that they deserve going forward. But 2 that I can't help but give out today are a couple just here. So 2 acknowledgements I have. The appointments of our Municipal Coordinator and Deputy Municipal Coordinator, Linda Robbins and Michael Newby. If you wouldn't mind please coming forward, selecting your certificates and your letters from the state government. Taking off shape. Huh? Newby? Thank you. Thank you to our team there. And speaking of the team as well, we do have a couple of apologies today, Professor Raze, Councillor Palmer and Councillor Britton as well. Moving through the agenda, item 3 is declarations of interest. A councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in any matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Do we have any declarations of interest today? Okay, there being none, we'll move forward to the confirmation of minutes at 4.1. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the City of Launceston Council held on the 12th of December be confirmed as true and correct record. Councillor Dawkins, seconded by Councillor Harris. Anything to contribute? Nothing from the table? Okay, all those in favour? All councillors present, the motion is carried. At 5, we have council workshops. 5.1 is the workshops conducted between the 12th and the 19th. Recommendation that council notes the council workshops conducted and attended since the last council meeting for the purposes published as a part of this agenda. Somebody to move? Councillor Dawkins, seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Dawkins, any contributes? Anything, Councillor Harris? Anything around the table? Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At agenda item number 6, we have councillors' leave of absence applications, and they will be discussed as a part of closed council at 23.4, 23.5 and 23.6. We do have a community report today at item 7. 7.1 is a community report with Just Cats, and we've got Tanya Triffett in here to address us for our first council meeting. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you very much. Rachel Beach is actually an apology. We had a little bit of a staff emergency, so she's brought me in at the last minute, so please bear with me. We had another busy year at Just Cats last year. We had 1,260 cats arrive into our care, predominantly from the north of the state. What we are starting to see is we're actually seeing more surrenders due to people actually experiencing cost of living crises. We are, as an organisation, attempting to help that. We now have a low-cost desexing facility. So last year in our vet clinic, we desexed 1,201 cats. That was a mixture of our cats that we ended up owning that came in undesexed and public cats as well. The City Council have also given us some grants along the way for what's called our Last Litter program, which is absolutely fantastic and the public love it. So what that is, if they've got a mum cat who's pregnant, the mum cat comes in, will give birth in our shelter, we'll raise her kittens, we will desex the mum and then give it back to the people. So, you know, she's not going to have any more litters of kittens. Our kittens are obviously all desexed under the Cat Management Act before they're adopted out. Of interest probably to the Launceston City Council is of the 1,260 cats that arrived from the Launceston City Council municipality, there were 534 cats. So there were 350 stray cats, which is nobody owns them or admits to owning them. 102 surrenders, which, as I say, is up on last year. 67 trapped, 2 transferred to us from basically the RSPCA because we work closely with them, and 13 that we did vet assistance with. So sometimes cats will be injured, they go into vets, people need to surrender them because they can't afford the vet fees, which we're very lucky we have some wonderful vets working in our clinic. The next 12 months, obviously we'll still be continuing to focus on the north, but we are about to open a shelter in Burnie because the northwest coast has actually not had a cat management facility or any types of facilities down there really for probably 2 to 3 years. So we'll be starting with our adoption facility hopefully in March. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about cats or anything like that.
If we do have any questions from councillors or the public, is there a best contact if it's through the website or through Facebook?
Through the website. So if you go onto our website, you will see how you can contact us, whether by phone or email.
Great. Excellent. Thank you for the report. Thank you for standing in for Rachel. I'm sure she would have loved to have been here also. And we really do appreciate the work that you do in our community on behalf of the community. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Moving forward now to public question time. At 8.1, our public questions on notice are published as a part of this readily available public document. And we'll move through to 8.2. Thank you. And just to reiterate that we do have some councillors out positioned in the foyer for these ones too. They are from Laurel House. They got lanyards and their name tags are ready to assist anybody who might need to leave the chamber for any reason. Okay, 8.2. I do have some people noted for some questions. Jessica.
Okay.
Before we get to the questions, now we've got our first speaker, CEO for the regulations.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just for the benefit of the meeting and those attending, I think it's important we just make sure we're clear on the guidelines and rules around public question time. If you are participating in public question time, please move to the microphone at the rear of the council chambers and state your name and address. You may then ask up to 3 questions. Please direct your questions to the Mayor. The Mayor may refuse to accept a question. If this happens, reasons will be provided. If your questions are accepted, they will either be answered at this meeting or taken on notice and answered at a future council meeting. Your questions are not to be defamatory, inappropriate or abusive, or be intended to embarrass any person, present or not. Debate or discussion about questions or answers is not permitted. Please note that only the questions asked at today's meeting, without preamble, will be published in the council minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Yes.
Okay, so I've got 3 new questions for the council. Some of you may not know, but my younger brother is an addict, a drug addict. What I've gone through the past 5 years with my younger brother has been heartbreaking. Over 5 years, he won't get any help. There's no help for family members of drug addicts. He forced himself into moving in with my mother back in May last year and abused my mother. I had a plan set up for my mum to be cared for by Uniting Age Well, and he had that cut off. He had everything cut off. I couldn't deal with it, so I cut off from seeing my mum because he was there. In October, I had to organise for my friend at Cadorna House, who my mum and I used to work for, to get my mum out of the house. She was being abused. She had bruises all over her body, on her hands and everything. It broke my heart as a daughter when I went to see my mum for the first time in 6 months. There has been no help, no support in this town. I want to see some law changes to stop family members from moving in that are drug affected. this should never have happened, but it did happen. I had to get my older brother to help me with a lawyer to get something to happen, to get him out of my mum's house. My mum left her house with nothing but the clothes on her back. We finally got into the house on Christmas Eve and finally got some clothes for my mum and stuff. We're getting the house ready to sell that later, in the next couple of months. But we've had utterly no help from police prior to getting an emergency restraining order. They refused to get him out of my mum's house. My mum has a very rare brain disease. It's called multiple systems atrophy. So it affects 1 in 100,000. That's how rare it is. She was diagnosed in 2016. And my brother took advantage of his mother. He conned her out of over $200,000+ since 2016. And it's heartbreaking for me as a daughter. And it's heartbreaking that we don't see anything happen in this town when it comes to drug addicts and enforcing rehabilitation. We have inadequate services when it comes to drug addicts. We have a rising crime rate in this town when it comes to drugs. We just saw somebody be shot by a police officer down in town, possibly over drugs or drug-related issue. We have a problem that is not being addressed. We are failing family members of drug addicts. We are failing families that have been through hell like mine. And my mum is an old woman. She is 73 years old. And I've been watching my mum slowly die from multiple systems atrophy and losing her ability to walk, her ability to speak, and her ability to make proper decisions for herself. And I just see that we're not doing anything. We put it in the too hard basket. We have a hotline number for elder abuse that does nothing. It's just a hotline number. We have a hotline number for family members of drug addicts. It's just a hotline number that does nothing, And my family has had to spend a lot of money getting a lawyer down at Ray and Partners to get him out of the house, And it's not right. And the police do nothing. This isn't good enough, Launceston. This is not good enough. There are heaps of families like mine that are struggling with drugs, struggling with a family member with a severe drug addiction and committing crime in this town. I got a phone call last year about my little blue car that I bought my mum because her 2 other cars got trashed by drug addicts because my brother gave them to drug addicts. And the next thing I know, the car's down in Burnie, stolen petrol, CCTV camera of my younger brother getting out of the car. And I'm the one getting harassed by police in this town. I'm the one that was rang up and knocked on the door from the police when it wasn't even me in the car. They had the footage, had nothing to do with me. But they still choose to harass me. I can't cope with drugs, I never have been. And I just want to see a council that is going to be ruthless and stand up for family members that have been affected by drugs. It's not an easy thing. It's a hard thing now. It's a hard thing, to deal and to know your brother or your loved one or your family member is drug affected. The person that was my brother is dead. He doesn't exist. The drugs have taken over. It's destroyed his brain, destroyed his life. It's destroyed my family. We're at the point we've broken. We can't cope. We can't deal with anything. And if he's going to be out on the street and upsetting the town of Launceston, well, it's about time Launceston starts doing something about this problem. I've heard about shops having their windows smashed in because the person's drug affected. And a slap on the wrist from the magistrate and they're back doing it again. And there's no rehabilitation for them. It's a circle. Anyway, I'm done now.
would you like to put that to your questions then?
That's
Simon?
all my questions in the 3.
Okay, excellent. Well, the
Okay.
questions that you submitted, I'll ensure that we take those on notice and we get some correct and direct information back to answer those questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions without notice. I have Michaela.
Afternoon. I'll try and be brief. Given the recent public disclosures regarding council fund use and... Oh, yeah, sorry, no, that's fine. My name is Michaela Lee. I live at 66 Hargrave Crescent in Mayfield. Given the recent public disclosures regarding the council fund use and alleged misconduct being carried out in council-backed community organisations, I'd like to know what process, if any, the council employs to assure that all organisations that they are endorsing and or sponsoring are acting in good faith and upholding their duty of care to the community. First question.
Thank you. If you would like to run through the full 3 questions, and
No
then
problem.
we can have a bit of an idea of where that information might need to come from, because I will preempt that they will probably be taken on notice.
Yep.
So to keep your
No, of
your
course.
flow and your NGL won't
Yep.
stop you 3 times.
Yep. Second question is, if a member of the public have concerns about misconduct and or a harmful environment within a local organisation that is actively supported by the council, what options do they currently have to inform the council for potential reassessment of any funding or support contracts? And what would be implemented in the future if there isn't anything there currently? And finally, what kind of accountability does the council hold toward volunteer-based community organisations who ultimately represent the City of Launceston should they be found to be maintaining an unsafe environment? For example, if 1 or more harmful interactions are reported and the organisation does not act in accordance with their positive duty to prevent further occurrences.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. And I will also give you a little bit of insight into the review that's going through with our proposed sponsorships and grants, but we will take those on notice and ensure that we've got the correct information and the correct processes and protocols. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Further questions without notice from the floor? Mr. Smith?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Happy New Year. Robin Smith on behalf of Coffee Republic. I didn't get to sign the sheet on the way in to say that we give notice of intention to speak to item 15.1, if I may, please. Question. At the AGM and here today, I noticed a number of references that council officers relating to parking have referred to abuse of parking officers. It's redolent in most of the reports, seem to be coming back. And I wonder if I could have a report of any reports from parking officers of any insults or abuse or even physical assaults that perhaps have come over the last, say, 2 years. Any reports and the outcome of those, please, because I feel that some of the feedback from the officers are that some of the actions are held because of the potential workplace abuse, insults and threats to the person of officers. It shouldn't be a consideration this day and age. Is that something that could be prepared?
I'll take that one on notice, Mr. Smith, and we'll have a look into the records and the appropriate way of moving forward.
Thank you. A second question. At the AGM, 6.2 was about blockies was raised, and I think it was Councillor Harris, who I do have an endearing respect for, but he did say that his opinion was, and so much of City Heart 2 one-way street conversions to two-way seems to be premised on the belief that converting the streets down will somehow challenge blockies. When Councillor Harris, and I spoke of about 1.9 kilometres around the city, which is the blocky route, Councillor Harris wasn't of an opinion. It seemed the percentage when I suggested turning Charles Street and Patterson represented less than 15% of the blocky route. Councillor Harris indicated that blocky route was Patterson, George, York and Charles. whereas I believe it to be all the way down York to Bathurst, along Bathurst, and then along Brisbane, which makes it the 1.9 metres. Is that something Mr. Mayor, Council could agree on? Council has celebrated blockies in the past. It does form so much of a part of the City Heart Stage 2 street conversions. Could we establish that? Because otherwise it undermines my arguments.
Can I just
have
have clarification as to what your question is there?
What the blocky route is.
Oh, what the blocky route is.
So
okay.
The council...
Yeah, I'll take that on notice as well.
It makes a difference as to the street modifications, sure, whether it's my 1.9 kilometres.
Sure. Yep, we'll take that on notice and we'll look into what council is defining as the blocky route in its
with regard to City Heart Stage 2.
Sure.
Otherwise, we're fighting something that doesn't exist. My version is different from that received opinion.
No worries. Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Any further questions without notice? Okay, there being none, we'll move through the agenda. Through 8.2, we have no petitions at 9 and no deputations at 10. So we move into Planning Authority. So under the planning provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items in Agenda 11. At 11.1, we have the 5 Wellman Street, Launceston application. Now, before we do get to the recommendation as the officers come up, I'll open it to the floor. I believe we do have a speaker noted here. Now, Jeff, is that at Wellman? Yep. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
So just your name and suburb.
Jeff Clark from David Demon Associates, 59 William Street, Launceston.
Thank you.
My understanding is there are 3 points in relation to this planning application which might require some clarification from me. The first being the front veranda, of which there are a number of issues. We have submitted a proposal to reinstate the veranda to its original detail, which has been recorded to some extent. We have retained the pitching point for the roof of that veranda so that we don't affect any masonry or flashings that form the roof. And the veranda has been widened for amenity by a small amount. And that work has been approved, or the drawings have been approved by Heritage Tasmania. The second point is to the north boundary where a new fence is proposed. Again, Heritage Tasmania has signed off on the design of that new fence. It is to be located in the same location as the existing fence and to the same height, but to a detail more reflective of the character and age of the building. And the owners have noted they are not seeking a cost share on the construction of that fence. They'll do it off their own bat. The third point is the south boundary, where the list map indicates a title boundary which runs through the neighbour's house. This is quite common, it seems. The title boundary that's shown on our drawings is only there because the only way we can lodge a DA is to show a title boundary which matches the list map. We have engaged a surveyor to confirm the boundary location, and the only reason we have done this is to ensure that we are building in compliance with the approved envelope for the new building and for no other purpose. And the application is not for changes to those south boundary fence lines in any way. That's all.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, as we move to the recommendation is that council permits a permit be granted from council for the construction of alterations and additions to a dwelling at 5 Wellman Street, Launceston, subject to the published conditions. Moved by the Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that clarification, because I think one of the issues was regard to the roof line on the front porch, so I think that clarifies that. But really, this is 2 things associated with is the heritage nature, for which we actually don't have a role in. That's being dealt with by Heritage Tasmania, and they've approved the heritage requirements in regards to the development, so I'm comfortable with that. I think the orangery in the back section of the house is something we approved 2 years ago, so it's really just reinstating that because the DA actually expired. So I'm comfortable with that, and the reality of it is the only issues that I can see are really the side boundaries and the impact that it might have on the neighbours. And given the only small nature of the extension of of the veranda. Clearly the sidewall is actually looking into the sidewall on the northerly aspect and is quite some distance from the garden and the building on the southern end, and therefore not requiring too much in regard to my view as far as the performance criteria. I think furthermore that the owners of the property are also providing some glazing to actually reduce any overlooking potential anyway of the garden. So the fact that it's on the front of the house is less likely to create any intrusions to the neighbourhood, and so therefore I think based on the assessment made by the officers, I'm very happy to support this today.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris.
If I may just ask a question. It's interesting, this is a historically listed house and yet we are dealing with internal matters on what happens inside the house, which is not the normal when we have our historic houses being thing. It's more about what the outside appearance is to the street. I wondered if the officers could perhaps just explain why that applies in this instance rather than just being what happens on the outside.
This application is for a property that's listed on the State Heritage List, so the provisions of the Historic Cultural Heritage Act apply to this. We effectively administer that as a single application process. So when you apply, we administer the approval, we refer it to Heritage Tasmania and they make a decision, and then we then administer that through our permit process. So on state heritage, the Historic Cultural Heritage Act deals with internal works and works on all built fabric. And so it's slightly unusual in the sense that on the local list, we wouldn't necessarily be dealing with internal works because it's a state heritage listed property, and the Historic Cultural Heritage Act covers internal works. That's why we're not assessing them under the planning scheme. We're just administering the Heritage, Tasmanian Heritage Council decision in that regard.
Thank you for that. And just a second question in regard to the veranda, which has been talked about, and our speaker mentioned that they are restoring it to what it was originally. The veranda is about 1.5 metres wide. They're going to add another 900 mil to the width of it. The existing decking doesn't sort of support the fact that the veranda was originally that wide. Having said all that, is that a decision of this council, or is it in fact the heritage listing and therefore the Heritage Council's decision that they've approved it, therefore we have no input on that?
I think the width of the veranda would be relevant only to the extent that it facilitates matters relevant to the planning scheme, such as boundary setbacks and potential for overlooking. So the fact that the veranda may be widened and that might be different to a previous original form is a matter for the Heritage Council. The fact, to the extent that that increases or decreases setbacks or increases or decreases over the potential for overlooking, that would be something that we would consider in our assessment.
Thank you. So in effect, there's very little for us to actually have to consider here other than the setback and the overlooking, of which I'm quite in support of the building application as it is, because there really isn't much else for us to consider. So we'll move on.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Any further contributions from the table? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, and I suppose in some ways Councillor Harris has, through you, Chair, stolen some of my thunder insofar as I think it is the veranda that most concerns me, but it is true, of course, that this is matters for the Heritage Council, Heritage Tasmania, and we should defer to their report, and these things are somewhat contained there. I do note that the veranda, upon inspection, does have what would appear to be original fixtures, sort of rough sawn lining in the ceiling, the shape of it. So this is not a restoration or a reconstruction, it's a rebuilding of that veranda. So there is fabric there, and I failed to find the detail from the Heritage report that acknowledges that fabric, that heritage fabric that is there, and whether that is original heritage fabric. I make that point knowing that that doesn't affect my decision. I make that point acknowledging that that is the case, and I do defer to Chris Bonner and Heritage Tasmania in regards to that. And I note too, the representation spoke towards the veranda, and I'm sure they're aware of that, and unfortunately I can't speak to them in this forum about that. There's a number of works internally, and this is where this state listing becomes important. These are things that none of us are privy to, and yet it's integral to the character of the building. And we've been here before with this building, with the orangery out the back, which is a difficult word to say at the best of times. But nonetheless, I will support this begrudgingly, knowing that there are still questions unanswered in regards to the extension of that veranda and what I consider is a complete rebuild. There's no reconstruction, there's no renovation involved. Of course, it will be done in the character of that building, but in this case, if there is any remnant fabric on that veranda, that will, in this instance, presumably be lost, if it is indeed original fabric, which I'm not to know. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Further question, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify, and from the officer's perspective, I think I heard the speaker say that actually the roof or the veranda was actually being preserved as part of it. I'm not sure, is that what's showing in the documents? He might be able to nod at you, but I thought that's what he said. It's not.
The roof is cut into a parapet wall at the front.
Yeah.
That cut line and the flashings associated are the same, but the roof will be flattened by a few degrees to get the head height by the time you get out to the end of the veranda.
Thank you.
Councillor Pentridge.
Somewhat confused with some of these comments, but overall I think all concerned need to be congratulated. Some of our beautiful old buildings, that we've got the common sense right across the board to whether we've got an opportunity here where we're making something more usable. It is a very narrow veranda. It might have suited times gone by, but I think that both the owners and all concerned should be complimented on having the common sense to approve this, and I'll be definitely supporting it. And yeah, well done. Congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Any further contributions from the table? Deputy Mayor to close? Great. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 11.2, we have 64 Robin Street, Newstead, which is the draft planning scheme and heritage listing. Before we get to the recommendation, I don't believe we have any speakers that have been noted, so we will move to that recommendation, which is that Council notifies the Tasmanian Planning Scheme Commission that no representations were received during the public exhibition period for the draft amendment, and that the draft amendment be approved as certified and exhibited. This one was also re-advertised as well over that period. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Dawkins? Any contributions on the table? Nothing to close? Putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. Ooh, like that. 11.3, draft planning scheme amendment, multiple heritage listings. No speakers, so recommendation is that Council, again, notifies the Tasmanian Planning Commission that no representations were received during the public exhibition period for the draft amendment, and that the amendment also certifies Instrument 2, 3 and 4 to reflect the correct title references. It's been moved by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Gibson. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you. This is very similar to the previous item with one exception, and that is we have a slight mistake on one of the pages where we talk about 58 Holbrook Street on page 50 of the minutes, yet on page 51, 58, Holbrook Street has become 58 Norwood Avenue, and there's just a need to make a note that that is in fact Holbrook Street that they are talking about. I had a look at 58 Norwood Avenue, which is around the corner, and I thought, why are we preserving that house? So obviously just a mistake, I'd say, because one of the houses on the list of many is in fact 4 Norwood Avenue, and hence that's where the mistake has probably occurred. But nevertheless...
Councillor Harris, just as you do go forward, just for clarification from the officers that just a bit of admin?
I think so.
Correct?
We'll correct that error. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
It's all right. And I guess the only thing to say is this was a process that I won't say we tried to fast track it, but we then got told by the Commission that our efforts to make it quicker was perhaps too quick, and we had to reopen for further community consultation, and there was none on either this or the previous item.
Cool. Cool. All right. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Gibson?
I guess just noting the actual recommendation's correct. It's
Yes.
the notation
Yes.
that that will be corrected behind the scenes, so no amendment.
Cool. Thank you. Yep. Excellent. Any further contributions? Anything to close, Councillor Harris? Thank you. Putting it to the vote. All those in favour? All councillors present. The motion is carried. At 11.4, we have 52 Franklin Street, Launceston. No one noted to speak to this one, so the recommendation is that council put forward a permit and put that for demolition of existing buildings and associated works at 52 Franklin Street, Launceston, subject to the published conditions. Somebody to move? Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And look, we visited the site this morning and understand the issues associated with an item which is on the local heritage register but not on the state heritage register. As can be seen from today's, there's been a lot of site contamination in the way things have been added to and reconstructed around an original building. It's not dilapidated, it's more that there are better examples of this type of property sitting around Launceston, and therefore this one is not necessarily required for preservation. It's been through our processes. I've read through what our officers have said, where there have been performance criteria and satisfied with what they've come up with. I think it's a good condition that we've got there in regards to salvaging any of the materials that are taken down for future use. I would hope that the state government, being the organisation who are putting forward this DA, taking that on board in regards to being an exemplar and how they can actually reuse materials that can be salvaged from demolition works and put in a safe place. The only, and I'll stop there other than just finalising the question, because it actually talks for future reuse in accordance with the waste management plan. Is that the waste management plan that they have or our waste management plan? And if so, do we know what that looks like? Because clearly putting those materials somewhere where they can be reused rather than just dumped somewhere where the idea they might be reused is one thing and never reused, and that's grass grow over, but just somewhere where it's actually appropriate where they can actually reuse it from. So can just somebody explain what that actually is?
Thank you. It refers to the waste management plan that was provided by the applicants. It's in the endorsed documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Happy with that, Deputy Mayor? Yep. Okay. Councillor Pentridge, as the seconder. Any further contributions? Cool. Anything around the table? A question, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. If I may share, this is not the sort of application that I'd like to be greeted with in the new year. A building that ostensibly is 160-something years old, that's on our local heritage list. My first question would be, why haven't we done a heritage assessment of this building as a part of this process?
Thank you. Richard.
Council's list is in the process of being updated. We have thousands of buildings and we have limited resources to do data sheets for all of them. We have a process to do it, but it will take some years for us to do it. In terms of this, we may call this a legacy listing, or a listing that doesn't necessarily accord with a modern standard listing. So this was put on at a time when we didn't require a statement of significance, or we weren't necessarily required to understand why we were listing it. The requirements now are much more significant, and there's dedicated criteria which you have to assess. Now, in terms of this application, we've received this application and we've processed it in our 30-day timeline. This was referred to our heritage officer, who requested further information. We asked for that further information. That satisfied us, and so we moved to assess it. So in terms of have we got a program to update our listings to a contemporary standard? Yes, there's thousands of properties in the similar boat. And so that's why in this instance we didn't do that. We did actually have a qualified heritage report submitted, which we reviewed and ultimately agreed with.
Thank you, Richard.
Is it true that that heritage report that was submitted was prepared previous to this demolition application? In fact, it was prepared the previous year, I do believe, in 2023, for the proposed site being used for a private hospital.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, that's quite correct. The initial heritage report by Praxis was prepared in relation to the earlier Calvary proposal. However, it's the same building, and obviously the responses to the request for further information came from the same authors and addressed the same issues. Thank you.
In that previous assessment, heritage assessment, there are discrepancies between what was to be kept and what was to be retained, to be lost in terms of this particular demolition application. I do believe now the trees are being retained, and that is being partly used as a justification in the demolition request, whereas previously those trees were slated to be removed when the original plans or the original concept was submitted to do a deep. All I'm saying is that there are changes that have happened between now and then, even though we don't have a plan for a development on the site as such. The trees are now going to be retained. What is the question? There are differences, there are discrepancies, I suppose, between what happened then and what is happening now.
Thank you again. I think ultimately it's relevant that it's the same building. The original proposal intended to knock all the buildings down, remove most of the hill, and take out the car park and the trees, excavate a substantial hole and build a large hospital in there. That proposal didn't proceed. It was withdrawn before it got to decision. The current proposal is to demolish all of the buildings. The only significant difference is that the row of trees and the car park are to remain. And I can only say at this stage, because I can't preempt what the new mental health facility that we expect the proposal for shortly, what that will look like.
So therefore, would it be fair to say that this heritage report and the concept of leaving the trees, which is being used as a part justification for the demolition of the building, is based on an idea and a development that we have not yet seen? In other words, these trees could still be knocked down. In other words, many of the things that are used in regards to the not for fit for purpose nature of the existing building may or may not be true, depending on what is planned for the site.
Thank you again. We've received a professionally drafted report by professional personnel. We have no reason to believe that they've set out to lie to us in any form. I would expect that their report is true, has told us the truth, and represents their intent at this stage to retain the trees. if we have a further application at a future time, that will be assessed at that time.
The building was on the State Heritage list until 2016 when it was removed. Was there an assessment done of the building at that stage? It was at a time when a large number of properties were removed from the State Register, including this one. Do we have a justification for that removal? I know it's documented somewhat in the Heritage Study.
So I did speak to Ian Borsma yesterday in that regard, sort of preempting the fact that that might be raised today. And so he informed us that after outlining some history, well, I can quote him. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me quoting him. The removal process was initiated in 2013, and I'll paraphrase. A site visit found that the place's heritage values, such as they might have been, were severely compromised by alterations and accretions arising from the past 60 years as a health facility. The original listing contained the briefest descriptions, no history, and brief statements against 2 criteria. In addition to the site inspection, historical research was undertaken and an assessment made against all the criteria in the Historical Cultural Heritage Act. The place was found not to meet the threshold requirements for entry into the Tasmanian Heritage Register. A public notice for removal was published in May 2014, and removal took place on the 6th of July 2015.
Thank you for answering those questions. We obviously face here quite a unique set of circumstances. Here we have an 1861 building that's on the local heritage register that we're being asked to give permission to demolish. On the face of it, that seems in these times for this city that values its heritage to be an absolute abomination that we would be doing this in this time. Then we look at the owners who owned it for 60, near 70 years. The very government department that's overseen its demise, that has done the extensions, has done the changes to the site, all for good cause. Of course, we all want a hospital, a functioning hospital, but nonetheless has overseen the building's demise and then applied for a demolition order because of the demise that they have overseen. If that was a private developer who owned a heritage building in Launceston, ran it down to rack and ruin, and then asked to demolish it, people would be in uproar. And it's the same situation here. It perhaps is over a longer period of time. It does fulfil a community purpose, but nonetheless, it's part of our built heritage. And I do question some of the, shall we say, excuses around the building's significance in terms of heritage that's contained within the heritage report. It is a very detailed report. It does show the long history of that building in our community, how it was lived in for 100 years, how it did suffer a fire 20 years after it was built, and we can only imagine was probably rebuilt to very much the same standard it was when it was new, and also follows the slow, long demise while it's been in the hands of the health department. My concern is here we have a state government who's quite willing, rather than to stand up for Launceston's heritage, is to ask for it to be knocked down. And while there's some provision there for retaining some trees, perhaps salvaging some bricks, in essence, nothing will remain of this building after 163 years of standing. Within the next 5 minutes, its fate shall be determined. It stood for 163 years. It's a solid building. It is, been extremely compromised. No one would disagree with that. Holes have been punched through walls. Ceilings have been lowered, fireplaces removed, staircases removed. There's no doubt that this would be a substantial cost to resurrect this building. But I do believe, of course, it's possible, but not without the willingness of the state government to show some recognition of our dwindling heritage, built heritage. I know I sometimes hear, oh, well, you can't save all of them. We haven't saved all of them. We've lost most of them. That's not an argument for the knocking down of this building. Yes, we do need a mental health facility. Yes, this would be a good site if it didn't have a 163-year-old house upon it. But I will not be supporting this demolition, and I call into question the process whereby we can have a heritage listing on a building, and if it wasn't for me asking this to be discussed in council, would have been automatically approved for demolition. At that point, I ask, what is the point of having a heritage listing on that building? So I would encourage my fellow councillors to consider pausing this process while we get further commitments from the state government in regards to what they intend to build there, because that may well include removing those trees that they're using as a somewhat justification of maintaining some continuity of the site. Let's not forget, this building that they are proposing, yet we've not seen the plans, will include a walkway across Franklin Street from that site to the main hospital. Now, that may well be a great solution, but I can't say that visually that that'll be the greatest thing to have happened in that area of Launceston that does still have a fair amount of heritage prominence and importance. There's been a piecemeal development of what we call the health precinct for the last 20 years or so. And this is just a continuation of that. It is unplanned. It doesn't even adhere to its own master plan anymore. The very master plan that is quoted in this demolition, if I could just a few more seconds. Thank you, Chair.
So putting it to the vote, it's been moved by Councillor Gibson.
No, I'm asking for an extension.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Yep. No, sorry, I wasn't putting the motion. I was putting your suggestion for an extension. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Pentridge. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. Couple more seconds.
If I could just finish. The very master plan for this hospital precinct, which doesn't exist, may I just remind all of Launceston, there is no such thing as the health precinct. It would be great if Launceston Council had a concept for that. We don't. There's a state government master plan for the hospital. That's all there is. We know that there's other health facilities in the area, and that's not a bad thing. But the point is, the very master plan that they quote in this document to justify the demolition is out of date. It has the mental health facility over on Howick Street. Howick Street's now going to become a car park. That's going to mean that we're going to put traffic lights on the corner of Howick and Mulgrave Street. So it's a hodgepodge. It's a pastiche, if you will, as far as planning goes. And every time they change their mind, they come to us and say, well, we'd like to do this now, or we'd like to do that now. And there is no planning. There was a time when we did have some kind of working group between council and state government in regards to this. That's been long gone. We've had no communication with state government over this. And I think it's high time that that was reinitiated so that we can all get a good grasp of how this development can happen cohesively in that region. I won't be supporting this development application. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. I've got a question from Councillor Harris.
Yes, just in regards to the demolition and the reuse of materials from that. Following our inspection today, it was clear that there is a substantial amount of internal fittings, architraves, skirting boards, one assumes also roof and wall timbers, in addition to bricks. And yet, through all the demolition notes that I can find, it says that any salvageable original material from the 1861 building likely to be limited to bricks to be reused in public areas of any new development. Are we really saying to those who are demolishing it, just reuse the bricks and nothing else? Or are we really saying we would like to see the skirting boards, the doorways, architraves, etc., being not only saved and if not reused in the new building because it may not be suitable, perhaps made available to those who are renovating old period cottages and other buildings built in the 1860s, because they did seem to be in reasonable repair, having been somewhat protected from the elements and probably subject to the health department's regular painting rituals and all that sort of stuff. So just in regard to what we can force them to do in regard to retention of the salvageable materials beyond just bricks.
I think forcing people in this regard is quite difficult, but I think having spoken to Heritage Tasmania on this issue yesterday about what would likely be salvageable, there was certainly talk of the bricks, which I was informed have some value and they are in relatively high demand, and that there would likely be some timber, some beams, some significant beams holding up the upper floor, which would have some value. Architraves and skirtings weren't mentioned specifically, but and there was also a suggestion that the Heritage Tasmania, the officers of Heritage Tasmania would be happy to discuss a partnership or a joint approach to try and talk to the proponents about what could be salvageable and what may or may not be able to be done in that regard. So that's something that I took on notice, and should this proceed today, is something that the officers could explore further with Heritage Tasmania and approach the applicants with. The degree to which we can compel them would be problematic in my view, but it would certainly be possible to make an approach on that regard.
Just a further question in regard to compelling, could it not be made a condition of the demolition that they have to not only safely remove the architraves, skirtings, doors, and they, if they were then delivered to our recycling centre out at the Launceston Waste Transfer Station out at Remount Road, then the Activity, was it Uptivity or something, shop could possibly have them for resale themselves. The risk is, of course, they drive the bulldozer through, knock it all down and it all gets splintered, and then there's nothing but a few bricks to retain. It's obviously more expensive and time-consuming to remove it correctly, but ultimately it means less in our landfill and more available for those who wish to restore other properties. With what is in fact unique things, if they're 150 years old, they've lasted this long, by cleaning and dipping them in paint remover, you can probably restore them and use them again.
So there is a condition that relates to this. It doesn't specifically call out anything particular other than a determination that if there are salvageable materials, that they be retained or recycled. So the judgment call about what can be retained and recycled would stay with them. I don't think we're in a position where we can supervise every moment of the demolition and identify individual pieces of material for recycling.
I accept that we can't be there to supervise it, but could we not specify that architraves, doors, etc. must be saved where possible as a condition?
So Councillor Harris, again, this is in condition 2 of local heritage, that any salvageable original materials, and then it's got examples there, from the site are to be retained or recycled. Is this something that you're saying you want to make an amendment to be strengthened? Because to me that's already covered, but...
Well, I'm just trying to... I've gone into the actual document that the officer referred us to. It just says
it's here in... The deputy did read this at the start too. Cool. Anything further?
just a question, if I may. I mean, how do we enforce that?
I mean, we would enforce that in the same way we would enforce any other planning condition. So we presume people do the right thing, and if we become aware that they're not doing the right thing, then there is enforcement action to be taken.
Cool. Thank you. Any further contributions? Deputy Mayor, anything further to close?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the contribution and lovely eloquence of Councillor Walker. I was surprised you stopped at Howard Street and didn't start talking about the Hobart Hospital redevelopment as well. We're actually talking about Franklin Street, and we sort of got a little bit further away than that in our dialogue, but good on you. The reality of it is, I've gone back to the officer's comments talking about deterioration of the existing building is not a current matter of concern. Rather, the building is not considered by the proponents to meet the needs of the proposed mental health precinct. It talks about substantial modifications of the 1861 building resulting from the 1883 fire and 1950s plus modifications which have largely destroyed the integrity of the building, the lack of demonstrative association with any prominent persons, cultural activity, etc., the historical associations of the place being unremarkable and not demonstrating anything out of the ordinary. So there are a number of things which I think lend itself to talking about the history of the building and its significance to Launceston, and I think that that's been adequately covered by our officers in regard to it. I'm comfortable that the trees, if they become an issue, that they'll need to come back to us for demolition before I think that they get knocked down, and I would doubt having actually seen concept drawings of the plans, because some of us were invited, I don't know who, but I know that at least 3 councillors went along to the consultation where they showed us what the new mental health precinct would look like, and the trees were a significant part of that development because of the soothing nature and of people looking out the windows and so forth like that for the mental health participants that were going to be there. So I'm comfortable with what the officers have recommended. I'm also comfortable, and I guess just to sort of further on some of the questions, it would be great if we married up Heritage Tasmania with the proponent to go and have a talk and look at the items that actually could be salvageable, and hopefully out of that we can get meaningful discussion about what they will salvage appropriately. So I'm happy to leave that as a basis on which we may be able to maximise the amount that's salvaged and lessen the amount that goes to infill. So on the basis of that, I think it's a development, well, a DA. I would have preferred to see the DA with it as well, like Councillor Walker. We haven't got that. We've got a decision to make on the demolition. I'm comfortable, having seen the concept plans and where it's going. I think it's going to be a really good building designed for great use for this city.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, officers. Okay, mayoral announcements at 12.1 are published as a part of this agenda. So looking at councillor reports at 13. Any councillor reports? Councillor Kai.
Thank you. Last year, on the 16th of December, I had the privilege of presenting the City Council Springboard to Higher Education Scholarship Award to an outstanding student at the Prospect High School Grade 10 presentation assembly. This remarkable young girl, Gabrielle Hedger, captured everyone's attention not only by performing a musical, but also by receiving 9 awards, including the Outstanding Academic Achievement Awards, DUCS 2024. Gabby was truly an outstanding student. On Tuesday, along with other councillors, I attended the meeting with Minister Kerry Vincent, the Minister for Local Government. So we're hoping it's going to be a good start to the year and that there will be more discussions and communications between the state government and the local council. Yesterday, I attended the 2025 City of Launceston Community Recognition Award ceremony. It was a true honour to serve as one of the councillors on the assessment panel and then having the opportunity to meet these remarkable recipients. And congratulations to David Dunn for winning the Citizen of the Year. We had 2 winners for the Youth Citizen of the Year, and they are, I can't pronounce her name, Nasharan Jafari and Jack Duncan. The sports award went to Rodney
Isel.
And the winner of the event of the year was the Launceston Park Run. It was a wonderful celebration of the contributions these individuals and groups have made to our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Again, I would reflect on last night was really, really good. I thought it was a great community event. I think we've had a number in the past where they haven't probably quite been as well attended, but I think it was back with aplomb last night. So I think there were some fantastic recipients, and I know most of them, and I think fantastic people that received it. And I think the list of things that those people have done showed how worthy they were of those awards. So congratulations to all of those. I'd like just to also note, I went to Beerfest this year, and I'd have to say, personally, I think I know a lot of people in Launceston. I walked through Beerfest and I only met about 2 people that I knew, and it was packed. It was absolutely amazing. I sat down with a couple of people from Norfolk Island and a couple of people from Melbourne who were actually extolling the virtues of this city. They'd been travelling around and were absolutely loving it. So I think that the event actually hit the spot. It was very calm. Everybody was sort of having fun. There didn't seem to be any issues associated with it at all. It was just really well set out. I thought the music was great. The layout was great, and just about everything they had there worked really, really well. So I'd like to really congratulate those. I also like to congratulate the organisers, and looking over at Lindy with Carol's in the park. I thought it was great being part of the security detail that brought Santa in, but you could just tell by the vibe in there that how much fun people were having, and it was just a really, truly great event. So congratulations to the organisers, including our staff who did an absolutely wonderful job in regards to so many different things. So working out how that partnership works out going forward, I think is something really unique that we can actually do, because I think we really, really got the compliance. Some of event organisation, I've been involved in event organisation, and that compliance aspect's the thing that usually drives you nuts. So their involvement in that aspect of it is really great, and it just means that the volunteers can focus on the big picture stuff, which I think is really great. So if we can work out something that works going forward in that area, that would be fantastic. So I just, it's been a great vibe over Christmas. I've seen lots of people in and around Launceston. The airport's been flying lots of people in and out, so it's been a really, really busy time in Launceston, and it's been a go-to place. So I'm really thrilled that so far the summer's been pretty good for Launceston.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further community reports? Yep, Councillor Harris.
Okay, I was going to let others go. On the 13th of December, it does seem a long time ago, I attended the Premier's Cocktail Party on behalf of the Council, where there was a great gathering of Launceston's business leaders. And as Councillor Mackenzie said, many were looking forward to the Christmas period, and it being a very bountiful one for them. Also attended the Mowbray Heights Primary School end-of-year assembly on the 17th, and Ravenswood Heights, I think with someone else, Joe, and came as well on the 18th of December up there at Ravenswood Heights Primary School. And also attended the Community Awards last night, and it does show the time, that amount of volunteers, and for those who were unsuccessful this time, perhaps put your nominations forward again for next year, so that the standard remains very high. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Any further community reports? Okay, moving forward into questions by councillors at 14.1. We don't have any councillors' questions on notice that have been identified as part of this agenda. So at 14.2, questions without notice, I've got Deputy Mayor and Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just refer back to a question on notice from the 12th of the 12th from Phil Brumby. He contacted me today, and so I haven't heard anything back in relation to it. I notice there is a response in today's agenda. Is that the only correspondence? Do we write back to the person who asked the question and advise them, or is the only place that we get that response in the agenda?
CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I can confirm our Executive Leader of Connections and Livability is going to reach out to Mr Brumby personally and have a discussion.
Yeah, because his question, he said, look, I read him out the answers on the phone this afternoon, and his issues were more about, he said fine was fine, other than the fact that he tried to pay it on the day, and when he tried to put in the number, it rejected it. He then rang council, tried to pay it over the phone. It then got rejected there because the council parking officer was out and about, and then he asked for somebody to get back to him. So his issue is more about working through the process and saying, how can we make the process better? He said, I've paid and it's gone through MPES. I was unregistered for 6 months driving around because they unregistered his vehicle. So there were a number of outcomes with that where he actually tried to do the right thing. So I think this does receive more of an answer than we got, and he was more just trying to determine and get the process right. Second one was just really in relation to the presentation from Just Cats this morning. I noticed the comment regarding surrender of cats due to cost of living, and 102 were surrendered, which may not have all been cost of living. And I'm just wondering whether we as council could reach out and see whether, because to me, the benefit of having a pet in your home, I would have thought for a number of those people it would be quite traumatic to be actually giving up their pets because it's important. And if they're giving it up for financial reasons because they can't afford to feed them, that's a pretty tragic outcome. As to whether there's some way we can actually just have a conversation with Just Cats about that, about how we can actually support people to maintain and keep those cats. A, it takes it out of the facility, and two, it may actually just provide ongoing companionship for those people who actually do adore their pets but just can't afford to do that. So just something to see whether there's some way where we can have some form of rescue package that actually helps keep those cats home. Now, Councillor Dawkins might know better than I about that, but I just think it's something that we could just reach out to find out, because I can't imagine, even on 102 surrenders, if 50% of them were the cost of living, it's not going to cost a lot for us to try and assist to keep those cats housed back in their houses.
Cool. We'll take that one on notice, Deputy Mayor, because, yeah, we'll have a look into the services available. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just read the notice. Have you got a copy of?
Yes, thank you for the advance notice. Go through all of the questions because they'll all be taken on notice.
So these are my questions without notice. And I note in the quarterly report from today's Council's Community and Place Network under item 17.1 that a report of a very successful, as mentioned before by the Deputy Mayor, Carols by Candlelight was held in City Park, organised in just 23 days by Councillor Lindy McMahon and a band of volunteers that was attended by a crowd of approximately 5,000 people or even more on Sunday the 22nd of December, and was supported by the City of Launceston's tourism and events team and many other divisions of council workforce as well. So my questions are this. One, the total cost of the event. What are the directly incurred costs to council of putting on this event, including wages of event staff and other council staff who assisted in getting the show up and happening and the cleaning up afterwards? What are the directly incurred costs for the hire of plant and equipment necessary for the staging of the event and that were paid for by the council? And three, how was the $10,000 McGrath Estate Agents sponsorship, the $5,000 that was provided by the old organising committee and the initial $15,000 council event grant money used for payment of these services? And finally, what is the estimate of cost of hiring equipment or other services provided by event sponsors, either for a reduced charge or in fact at no charge at all? My second question is, what will happen now in regard to planning for Carols by Candlelight in 2025 by council events and tourism staff, or will a new volunteer-based committee take over the running of the event? Thirdly, will the council consider alternative ways of assisting future Carols by Candlelight events by way of a permanent soundstage and associated infrastructure on council-owned land, including other venues other than the City Park, such as, but not limited to, the First Basin or, in fact, Riverbend Park? And finally, on the minutes of the 12th of December 2024 meeting agenda, questions on notice item 14.1.1, Councillor McMahon's questions about the previous organising committee of the Carols by Candlelight were to be circulated to council officers, and a report will be provided back at a future council meeting. As these questions have not been answered in this meeting's agenda as I had expected, when can a public response be expected to these questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Thank you for the advance notice. We'll take those on notice and ensure that we get all that information. Further questions without notice? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. My questions to begin with in regards to the Glendew pool, and you might think that we as a council don't have much to do with that, Education Department, State Government, and so forth. But nonetheless, has the council had any discussions with State Government or Education Department in regards to this facility?
Excellent question. Thank you. CEO.
Thank you. Through the Chair and to Councillor Walker, I can confirm that I do have a meeting scheduled with the Education Minister for later this month to discuss that very issue.
It's been brought to my attention that when a demolition order was sought from Council, that no structural report was executed. Can I get that confirmed, that there was no supporting documentation in terms of the justification being, structural issues were the reason behind the demolition? And I suppose associated with that, do they even need any justification to demolish the pool, even if there was nothing wrong with it? I suppose is the question there, or two questions. Mm-hmm. But then further to that, does Launceston Council, I'm sure we have school groups that go to our facility at Windmill Hill, the Aquatic Centre. Do we charge for school groups to attend there? And if so, how much do we charge? I'm expecting these will all be taken on notice, but I shall keep going. And finally, will the council formulate a position in the name of the citizens of Launceston, the children of Launceston, and their right to learn how to swim, which should be no different than their right to walk to school or learn to ride a bike, and that right is being at the moment eroded. Something that was free at a pool that was of an even level, which all educators have said makes for a far safer experience for those children, something we can't necessarily provide. What is the best way for the council to respond and to formulate a position on this before this destruction takes place?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. We'll take those yes on notice, and noting that there is a meeting coming up and there has been some discussions leading to that meeting. Thank you.
Further questions. Have we had a reply from the state government in regards to the money that was offered in regards to a potential pathway from Lilydale to Lilydale Falls? Has there been any further correspondence since the council decision last year to amend what we accept? Has there been any further discussion in regards to a truck stop on the southern outlet adjacent to Kings Meadows and associated sound walls and so forth that we're going to go with that after Launceston Council expressed concerns around that? As far as I'm presuming these are all taken on notice. Jump in if you wish to answer any of these questions.
You've got a flow going.
Hospital precinct plan, a master plan. I think it's been a good couple of years since Launceston Council had an active relationship with either the health department or state growth or whoever's behind it in regards to having a working group discussing the implications of the expanding hospital precinct. Can the council, first of all, seek to have that reinstated? Second of all, investigate ways in which we could work towards having a more active role in decision-making around that plan. For example, what has come up today, the switching of sites for the mental health facility. Now a car park is going to appear, an additional car park on the previous Anno Burn site, an example of a building that's been demolished for no particular good reason now, other than a flat car park, which in turn means traffic lights on the corner of Mulgrave and Howick Streets. So the flow-on effects are becoming quite apparent, I suppose, is what you'd say. And can the council investigate ways in which we can rebuild that communication? Finally, have we had any communications with North Launceston Football Club and their ongoing concerns around access at York Park? And indeed, what will council's representation on any board or group or association in regards to Stadium Tasmania and York Park look like? Will it be the mayor? Will it be our CEO? Who will be representing Launceston Council's interests and therefore the community of Launceston? Because I was aware that we would have some representation in those future models.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. As the CEO scribes, is there any insight, or we'll take them all on notice and get the correct info?
Thank you through the chair, and thank you, Councillor Walker. I will take them all on notice. I can give you snippets of each of those, but for the fullness of it and for transparency to be able to publish it in the agenda, I think will be much more beneficial.
Thank you. Councillor Pentridge.
I have been approached by the North Launceston Football Club too, and although I have talked to our CEO, and I'm more than happy with his explanation. The reason that I'm bringing this up, I think we've got to get away from telling people everything will be all right. Just give us time. There's got to be some set times. These people there is people being held accountable. They are being asked questions. They need to have answers. So I'd like to think that within the near future, we get an opportunity to give these people some firm answers of what they can expect. And the concern for North Launceston has been that they've enjoyed a fantastic facility for a long time. Nothing lasts forever. There's going to be a bitter pill to swallow. That in itself is bad enough. It's not knowing what the future holds for them. And I think North Launceston is very dear to me, and I think to a lot of other people. And I think they need to be given a bit of clarity of what's going to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Any further questions without notice? Okay, moving forward then. Through to notices of motion. At 15, we have a notice of motion. Councillor Walker, with the provision of multi-storey parking in the CBD on Boxing Day. So the recommendation is that Council notes the demand for parking on Boxing Day in the Central Business District. And 2, investigates options providing parking in the CBD on Boxing Day at the following locations, which is the 2 Patterson Streets and Elizabeth Streets. It investigates the feasibility of providing parking on other public holidays and report the findings back to Council meeting within 3 months of the motion. So moved by Councillor Walker. It's been seconded by Councillor Harris. And before we get to the speaking, Mr. Smith, this is at 15.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Walker for putting this up. It's timely and it will take a long time for this process. It does say 3 months. I'd recommend this as it was recommended back in 2009 by the Council's Luxmore Parking and Sustainable Transport Strategy for the City of Launceston. It said on page 89, the parking demand needs to be managed, and it says the Council doesn't have any meaningful data on the demand. It also noted there was no real strategic purpose for the use of the car parks. Year before last Christmas, that was 26th of December 2023, Council ran these car parks in Patterson Street East and West. I'm not sure of the revenue, I'm not sure of the hours or the demand, but it's. I was very disappointed, and it might not have escaped your notice that I was disappointed, councillors, that the car parks weren't open. This 26th of December just gone. The Saturday the 14th, Sunday the 15th of December, Saturday the 21st and 22nd, these very car parks were free. And I was not ungrateful that council did it, but I felt it was not necessary. I would have rather you charged for those car parks. They were probably capacity days anyway, and you'd spent the money on better lighting of the car parks, cleaning of the car parks, signage, CCTV enhancements, security enhancements. So it would be interesting to see. It concerns me greatly here that the council officer writes, and these seem to be new considerations in response to this, where council officers have written that parking safety due to traffic flow, and I'm not familiar with that, and it's not been brought to my attention before, I'm not aware of it. Also, they talk about outdated and incumbent infrastructure. That certainly would need to be looked at. Now that the officers raised it, it should be incorporated into the consideration. These are all new things to me. Also, where it talks about streamlining operations and be more agile. I don't know where the agility is needed. I mean, these are something that should be thought of in advance, whether you're going to these last-minute acts of largesse to give away. Parking shouldn't really be a consideration. It should be structured, and the public should know when you do have them available, when it's available. It should be quite easy to know when a car park's open, rather than just when you drive down the hill. If you'd support this, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Walker is the mover.
Thank you, Mayor, and I do thank my fellow councillors. This motion could have come from anyone around the table, including yourself, Mayor, I'm sure, who did instigate the free parking before Christmas. It, I suppose, was a collusion of events that have brought this to a head. There was a cycling event on the same day as Boxing Day sales in Launceston. I wasn't in attendance. I'm not a big Boxing Day sale fan, but nonetheless, a lot of people were, as we all were made aware. That collusion, if you will, has probably brought about that heightened awareness. I'm not aware of it last year, for example, let alone 2009, through you, Chair. But nonetheless, an eminently, simple solution hopefully can be found. I am told that also our parking officers have already done some work in this area. So it probably will be quicker than the 3 months that we hopefully will get some kind of response. This is not to say that this would necessarily be limited to Boxing Day. It could be any public holiday that's deemed appropriate, especially if there's a big event on a public holiday, which quite often there is. And I think it augurs well. I don't mind the fact that we did have the free parking in town, because I think it goes also towards the current economic times that we find ourselves in, where people, for whatever reason, are struggling. They are having to do their shopping, buy Christmas presents and things like that. So I thought it was timely. It's only a token amount, at the end of the day, but it's a gesture of goodwill, I suppose, from the council. Something that we have done before in previous years. When COVID first hit, council was very quick to respond in that sort of type of community package. These are not the same times as those. And I would like to know whether we're responsible for a cycling race in town on the same day as Boxing Day, and whether we have any influence over where that's located or what day that is held, because that would have seemed to have contributed to the problem. But nonetheless, as I say, I acknowledge it was Councillor Pentridge who suggested that all councillors could put their name to this. So in that instance, I did put that to councillors, and their names are listed here. As I say, any councillor around this table could have put this forward, so I don't take personal sort of credit for this in any way, shape or form. And whilst not preempting support from my fellow councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just on the cycling event, it did close Tamer Street, Brisbane Street, Elfin Road, Littleton Street, Racecourse Crescent and Cimetière Street to create the loop around a slightly larger city park, if you like. And so that would have no doubt had some impact on the ability, particularly those on the eastern side of the city, to head into the city to do their Boxing Day sales. And the other one that, and I do thank Councillor Walker for bringing this motion, he added the thing on other public holidays, because it's always been of great interest and regret to myself that on Anzac Day, which is always a public holiday, the car park, particularly at Patterson West, is not open. And you have Patterson Street closed to enable the crowds who gather at the cenotaph to spill out onto the road, so you have even less parking available, and we simply don't have the nearest car park open for people to park there. So certainly we'd like to see that. We were hoping to see, I was hoping to hear perhaps earlier today in a workshop from our parking officers as the reasons historically why we have had it closed. That hasn't happened, but we look forward to hearing that sometime soon, but also receiving their report in the next 3 months. So I do once again thank Councillor Walker for bringing this forward, and look forward to everyone else supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Further contributions? Councillor Kai.
I think it's a great idea, but I was just wondering how important it is whether my name is spelt right or wrong. Not important? Okay.
It's not in the recommendations, Councillor Gibson said earlier today. We can ensure that that's corrected in the notations going forward.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you. That's all right. Okay. Putting to the vote, all those in favour, all councillors present, the motion is carried. We have no committee reports at 16, so we're going through to 17, which is Connections and Livability, the quarterly report from the Community in Place Network. Recommendation is the council receives the report for the period of the 1st of October to the 31st, and that has been moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Gibson. Oh, sorry. I'm going to get this computer removed, actually. No, it's here. Councillor Gibson?
Thanks. This is a great initiative. Really appreciate receiving the detail of the report. Three things from my perspective. Really outstanding to see the Visitor Information Centre again recognised for the outstanding work that is undertaken there, particularly at a time when perhaps other levels of government are considering the future of visitor information centres. And we know that ours packs a punch. It brings in revenue. It acts as an agency for the whole of the state as well as the region, and that our people love what they do, they're well regarded, and it provides an outstanding service. Number two, particularly with regard to Learn to Swim, it's fantastic, and I'm sure if Councillor Palmer was here, he'd point out the incredible initiative of initiating that program at Lilydale, which I think is wonderful. And the third thing for me that I just wanted to point out was how wonderful it is. Of course, there's so many things contained in the report, but the new banner system, which we've been waiting for so many years for around the CBD to activate different parts of the city with those banner flags, which is appreciated.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Walker will be happy that 2,504 children exercise their right to learn to swim. So that's excellent. We're very happy about that. But look, I want to talk about something more serious. On National Survivors Day, I was happy to be in attendance to listen to us talk about our statement of commitment. But what I really want to talk about is seeing Daisy Ford for the last time. Daisy was a tireless campaigner, a victim survivor who had, I guess, acknowledged what had happened to them as a young person later in life and became a staunch advocate for victim survivors. And only as soon as they were able to freely speak about what happened and become that advocate, they were a nurse at the hospital, so they'd experienced a whole lot of first-hand lived experience around stuff like this, apart from what happened to them as a young person. They spoke to the Commission inquiry. They were a part of the network who enabled us to be first movers, but then they were diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer and died a few months after that diagnosis. So they passed away just before Christmas, and I want to pay tribute to the incredible legacy they leave behind, and they will be very sadly missed.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Deputy Mayor.
The reports are fantastic. It's just the volume that gets me, keeps me very, very awake at night. I just wonder, just for the purpose of ongoing, whether we can split the reports over 2 meetings, just so that, because I must admit I've read them, but I've skirted through some where I'd like to have probably read in more depth. I may go back later on, but then again I may not. So I just wonder whether there's some sense in actually just reporting them over 2 meetings, just to ensure that we get a good chance to read through it, because 263 pages plus all the attachments is a lot to take in. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Further contributions? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. And while my fellow councillor does point out children's right to learn how to swim may well be the case, but unfortunately it has been reliably, I've been reliably informed that parents are waiting for quite a long time to receive a response. They're being encouraged to log online because all the classes are booked out, and when they log online, they're then waiting for quite a few months for a response because we just do not have enough room in the Learn to Swim classes. And of course, no fault of our own. There was an education department pool, but I think it's closed at the moment. But you know, that might have alleviated some of parents' angst when it comes to something so important as knowing how to swim, preventing deaths. It's really important. And while I do congratulate the council on the numbers going through. If we do have a bottleneck, that needs to be acknowledged in this report also. It's acknowledged that they're booked out, but it sounds more troubling than that. It sounds, like I say, I've been reliably informed that parents are waiting months for a response. Now, I won't comment as to the veracity of that. That's just how it's been reliably reported to me. So, so work to be done there. Some fantastic work. I encourage anyone listening to read these reports, and I thank our new CEO for instigating this, because it's a really reliable way for the public and myself to be informed about things such as the development of works out at Carr Villa, for example, an area that will come under increasing pressure in terms of space, where decisions will have to be made about future arrangements, burials, perhaps even a new site for Launceston at some point for a new cemetery, and what that could include, you know, the options that can include. So you can read all about it there. You know, the many and varied jobs that council attends to, I suppose, and the ongoing works, which a lot of these are. I'll leave it at that. No, yeah, thank you for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further comments? Anything to close? Okay, putting it to the vote to accept the report. All those in favour, that's all councillors present. The motion's carried. We have nothing in item 18, so moving into 19, which is community assets and design. Quarterly report, infrastructure and assets network. The recommendation is that council receives the report for the period of 1st of October to the 31st of December. Ensuring that I look right round the table. Deputy Mayor, seconded. Councillor Harris, Deputy Mayor.
Again, I don't want to pay light on the work that's been put into this, but you know, again, we can speak forever on all of these reports. But I think that, as Councillor Walker said, I really, to the listeners online and those perhaps reading somewhere along the line when the Examiner reports this tomorrow, they should go into our papers and actually have a read of this, because they want to find out what our council's doing. This is the place to find out in really good summary form. So I commend the officers who have put those together, and I think it's really good because it can see that things are actually getting done. So terrific.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, great work. Shows the great amount of work that's done, including the customer service requests. And you're noticing here the road had 391 customer service requests in the quarter, and the parks had a further 387, along with nearly 3,000 scheduled maintenance opportunities they had done. So it shows a lot of work is being done. It does raise the question of where we're at with our level of service review to indicate of those scheduled maintenance, whether that is in fact still suitable, and whether in fact we are over-maintaining some areas and under-maintaining others, and just when we will see that report for us to consider, because obviously that helps us then be able to set staffing levels and everything else that falls out from once you have a service level understanding of how much you're going to service a particular, whether it be a park or a road or whatever. So I look forward to when that being, whether you have any information on when that might be available, that would be good, but if not, I'll just take it as that.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Any further contributions? Anything to close? Okay, put it to the vote to accept the report. All those in favour, all councillors present, the motion is carried. At 19.2, we have proposed new street name, with the recommendation being that council approves the name Jennings Court for the cul-de-sac in the industrial subdivision of Waverley. Somebody to move? Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Yes, a new name, Jennings Court, not named after A.V. Jennings, who are building homes, but in fact after the original grant of the land. And we don't seem to have a Jennings Court in northern Tasmania, or a Jennings anything, so a good name for a street.
Cool, thank you. Anything as the second to Councillor Pentridge? Cool, okay. Putting it to the vote, all those in favour, all councillors present, the motion is carried. 19.3 is another proposed new street name. So this one is with the recommendation that council name Nagara Street for the extension of the existing Nagara Street
and the name Penn Drive for the road stub, which will be a future connecting road. Someone to move. Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Yes, Nagara Street is how us locals in Norwood would pronounce it, and it is just an extension of it to the new subdivision that's in the Launceston Golf Club. Pennant Drive is, of course, a golf-related term of those who play pennant golf, I suspect, and so perhaps an appropriate term for the new road. Interestingly, they do talk about it being a connecting road that may go further along the back of Warragul Street, but nothing as yet when that might happen.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Harris. Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
I do, because Pennant Drive does create a number of issues. So it was actually a requirement of council to put that in. And I can assure the natives who might be listening out there, particularly those members of the Launceston Golf Club, there is no intention for that to be made into a road anytime soon. So it was a requirement of council to have that road put in there for the golf club for future reference, but certainly it is not the intention of the golf club to utilise that.
Okay. Putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? All councillors present. The motion is carried. 13.4, we have the Launceston Waste Centre Compliance Assessment of Annual Environmental Review for 23-24. Recommendation is that council notes the correspondence from the Environmental Protection Authority included as an attachment in this report, and notes the City of Launceston complies with all conditions listed in the Environmental Protection Notice. Someone to move? I've got Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie, our Deputy Mayor. So, Councillor Walker.
No, very little reason to speak to it. The certificate's there. We comply on our annual assessment.
Cool, thank you. I've got a question.
Yeah, just briefly, in 1.9, we made no commitments for 23-24, so we can't be assessed. Is that usual? Do we generally have commitments, or is it just this one time we didn't?
I'd have to take that question on notice because I don't have the officer available.
Cool, thank you. Deputy Mayor is the seconder? Cool. Any other contributions? Nothing to close? Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? All councillors present. The motion is carried. At 20, delivery and performance. 20.1 is the quarterly report for Organisational Services Network. Recommendation that we receive the report for the period 1st of October to 31st of December. Somebody to move? It's been moved by the Deputy, seconded by Councillor Dawkins.
Again, sorry to rush you up there. Comments really are irrelevant to the last one. I think good report, but I think we don't need to talk about it in detail here.
Sure. Councillor Dawkins, any further contributions? And nothing to close? Wait for the General Manager to get up to his seat and we'll tell him, thank you. We're done. So putting it to the vote, all those in favour, all councillors present, the motion is carried. 20.2 is the Highway Dedication Inveresk Bridge Stage 2. Recommendation is that Council declares that the second stage of the Inveresk Bridge is to become a highway maintained by Council. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
Question, if I first I just note that obviously we're taking over the bridge bit and the public walkway as well. So my question really relates to any ongoing contributions or responsibility of the university in regards to any of those, particularly the walkway which is on their property, given that university students will be using that as well?
So once the highway dedication takes effect, council is required to maintain the highways, the bridge itself. The walkway is the responsibility of UTAS, and we have that built into the documentation.
Great. That's what I thought.
Excellent.
Yeah, I will now speak. Yeah, thank you. This is a bit of a long time coming, I think, for various reasons. And I guess the main reason why it's taken some time to get there is we've been needing to be satisfied with the engineering that we're taking over to ensure that the building of the bridge is being done in a satisfactory manner, so that we're taking over something which is appropriate, which I think, if I recall, in our original bridge we had some time after the build was done before we actually took possession of it to ensure that we were comfortable with all the engineering aspects thereof. I trust and I know there has been some discussions between the parties in regard to that. The fact that we are putting that forward as a recommendation, we've now got to a stage where we're satisfied with those engineering outcomes and therefore at an appropriate time for us to take it over. So I think this is a great, almost final bit of the UTAS redevelopment. I know there's some work still to be done in the stone building, but substantive of their buildings, they're pretty well done. And I think, I must say, from my perspective, the visual outlook of those buildings are absolutely fantastic and a great asset to this community. So I'm delighted, and I'm even more delighted in the way that Launceston City Council has worked really productively with the university in regards to undertaking all these things. So well done, and I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly, yes, Councillor Mackenzie and I were on that steering committee, and it does show the value of having those steering committees. So perhaps if we do get a health precinct plan, we do need to be represented on those steering committees to make sure it's implemented and able to address any issues as they come up. Yes, this is taking at the bridge and the right of way. It does then leave council with the next bit of work of how you safely cross Cemetery Street. And I look forward to council coming back to us with perhaps the solution of how that may be accommodated within what is a very busy thoroughfare, being Cemetery Street as a freight route. But happy to support the motion as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge.
Look, I won't be supporting it. I'm lost. Just recently in conversations, we've had conversations about the need to rid ourselves of certain assets that are unproductive and never will be, and the ongoing costs of maintaining those things. Why we are so quick to accept the responsibility for something that we get for nothing anyway. I mean, that walkway, is it suggested that the uni will put a tollman there or a troll to allow people to walk across it? We've got the opportunity, luckily, which comes along once in a lifetime, where the uni built something that this community can benefit from and use. So why are we so quick? And as has already been mentioned, it has got its share of problems, and it will have ongoing problems. Why are we so quick to accept that responsibility and let the uni off the hook?
Okay, Councillor Pentridge, I'll take that as a
you.
question.
Yeah.
General Manager or Duncan, is there precedents or ways in which that this is commonly done for councils, or how can we address Councillor Pentridge's question around why are we doing this?
The decision you're asked to make will secure the public's right of that area into the future. So the council's required to maintain the bridge, but the walkway, the UTAS has to maintain that. So we put a lot of work into getting those protections in. So there's a legal mechanism that we can force the UTAS to maintain the walkway if need be.
Okay. A further question, Councillor Kai, then Councillor Walker.
Yes, so similar to Councillor Pentridge, I was just wondering, by us maintaining that walkway or bridge, does that mean the public has access to it, so anybody could use it?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Walker?
Yes, if I recall correctly, was there a 12-month period initially with the bridge that went across the North Esk between its completion and our acceptance of that part? I might have been wrong on the 12 months. It might have been longer, because I know we had some engineering issues with that one, and that time clock didn't start. Is that so? There's that in question, and then I suppose subsequent has been the same conditions with this section.
So there was at least 12 months on the first section, and there's going to be 12 months on the second.
Oh, so this is just instigating. It's not.
So it won't come into our ownership until we publish the Gazette notice.
Yeah.
So that's the trigger point, and then it becomes our property.
That's right. And at that point, do we do any further assessments? I know we have a regular assessment of all our bridges and walkways and roads and all sorts of things, but before we accept it, is there a final engineering assessment?
So we do that under the development application, the planning permit.
When it's built? Yeah, I agree. But in the case of the bridge across the North Esk, there were definite structural issues that were resolved. I can only imagine there were structural issues with the road in this section that we are now instigating our acceptance of. My concern, I suppose, is that those will be ongoing, you know, that there may be further subsidence, for example.
So as I understand it, our engineers have been quite a bit more involved in this section of the bridge, and they haven't had the sorts of issues they were dealing with in the first section.
One would hope not. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question, Deputy Mayor, then a question, Councillor Kai.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just for the purpose of for clarification for Councillor Pentridge, if I'm not mistaken, I understood that when the decision to build a bridge and the walkways were put in place, I think it was under the basis that they would build the bridge and we would take over the maintenance of it because of the public use. Is that how you understand it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was in this decision. Councillor Kai?
No, that answered my question.
Okay, thank you. Any further contributions? Anything to close, Deputy? Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. 20.3, we have delegation under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act. Before we get to the recommendations, CEO, there were some questions around this last time. Are you able to just give us a quick little brief around this is changing names with the changing of the executive titles? Just for clarification.
Absolutely. Thank you through the chair, and you are 100% correct. All we are simply doing is reflecting the delegations to the name changes and the recent restructure. We're not proposing to impose further delegations back to staff and or take delegations away. So it's status quo with name changes.
Point of order, Chair.
Oh.
In the report, it says that this is the result of name changes that took effect on the 13th of January 2024.
Okay.
Should that be 2025?
Yes, it should, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Okay, so with that explanation, the recommendation is that we revoke any previous delegations and we delegate them now to the position titles as they are now held. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor has moved, seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, and again, we've had conversations about delegations and the appropriateness thereof, and I think when you read through the list of those things, if we didn't delegate those and we kept them in council, we'd be here 24/7 answering questions. So this is why these delegations are appropriate. I think they've been really well explained, so thank you for the actual explanation rather than putting section 57, putting some details about what they all do. So thank you for doing that, but certainly the things that I read on there are things I don't particularly want to be involved in.
Sure, thank you. Councillor Harris, anything further to contribute? Anything around the table? Councillor Walker?
Oh yes, I do think that sometimes these delegations, it's difficult to understand their implications until they're used, and that, I suppose, is the difficult thing of reading these tables. It's not until you find yourself in a certain situation where a decision may come before council that you realise it's not your decision after all. It's been delegated. So I think that there's probably room for council. It's the case that, you know, after every election within 12 months, delegations have to be reviewed as part of the state local government legislation. In this case, we do have new people in new positions, a new CEO. I think it is appropriate that we do have that conversation at some time to just for councillors, you know, to be refamiliarised with the delegations. So I suppose that's the only suggestion I would make. It is all laid out here. There are quite a few delegations and functions that are legislated that are not really optional choices for this council. They have to be in the hands of the relevant officer, and that has to be delegated. And there's no way around that. Yeah, we could become you know, the dog catchers of Launceston if we really wanted to, for example. We could decide whether a dog needs to be put down or something like that. I don't think we just... Beg your pardon?
Yeah, we have dog control officers.
Yeah, yes, but I'm saying we've delegated that. Saying we could do it ourselves, but I don't think we really want to. So, you know, small example, I know, but the point being... shouldn't have mentioned animals, I'm sorry.
Not at the moment.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further contributions? Councillor Pentridge?
I'm more than happy to go on record, and I believe that we currently have a new administration, and I'm very supportive of it. But might I remind all my colleagues that we have had other administrations, and I think we're going to be cleaning up the messes of those for a long time to come. So although I can't support it, I've been against too many delegations by staff. But I want to make it clear that I am supportive of our new administration, and you know, so for the sake of the principle, I have to decline.
Thank you. Any further contributions? Anything to close? Okay, Deputy Mayor.
I do, and thank you for those comments, Councillor Pentridge. And what I would say is we all can learn and we can all work from various things. My belief is that we appoint a CEO, which we've done recently. My view is we delegate things to him and then delegate down as appropriate from there. I would hope that in the event that even if the delegation said I can do this and it's something of controversial or challenging nature, that the emotional intelligence of the CEO would be, I should bring this back and discuss it with council. So that's how I would leave it, on the basis that whilst the delegations exist, there may be times, and Councillor Walker referenced there may have been times in the past where the delegations were appropriate, delegations were made, but maybe it would have been appropriate if it had been discussed at councillor level. So I guess just in a finalisation of that, that's how I would see this as working. Delegations are there for the day-to-day, but looking at something and saying, hey, this looks a bit challenging, or I think I should take this back to the council because it's of significant interest to the community, is something that the CEO would actually do.
And if I can just add a little to that, as two examples, the tree at the York Park development was available for delegation to just be demolished, and also with the chairlift and the leasing there. So there's a couple of examples of where the CEO has brought delegated decisions back to the council, which is in support of what you're saying there, Deputy Mayor. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all those against? The motion is carried. So we have some delegations here under the Highways Act of 1982. Delegation under the local government, and the recommendation is that council revokes previous delegations and delegates them to the current holders with the position name changes. Someone to move? Councillor Dawkins? Seconder? Councillor Harris? Councillor Dawkins? Oh, a question first?
Just a question. I just note that we did have an email prior to this which said that I think we were going to have a point 4 there now, noting that the CEO is also known as the General Manager in the Act. Is that with this one and probably the previous one?
CEO, for clarification.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through the Chair. Yes, we can add it. There is the preface at the beginning of every agenda which does automatically cover it, but most certainly, yes, we can. If the mover and the seconder wish to add that point 4 in for clarity, absolutely we can.
Point of order, Chair.
Yeah.
Likewise in the previous one, this has been referenced as January 13th, 2024.
Okay.
And the report should note that it was 2025.
Thank you. Councillor Dawkins is the mover.
Yes, the schedule's there. It's clearly laid out where those delegation authorities will lie. I guess it's the same argument as the last motion, so we'll just leave it at that.
Do you have a preference as to whether point 4 is put in?
Oh, look, we've got them in the next ones. I just seem to be consistency as much as anything.
Sure.
Okay. Councillor Harris is the seconder. Okay, put the number 4 in. Anything further on this one? Councillor Harris is the seconder. Any contributions on the table? Okay, to the vote then. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. 25, we've got delegation from council to the CEO around neighbourhood disputes about plants. This is the Act 2017. So the recommendation is the same as the two previous in terms of
moving the delegations that are currently into the new roles and also being able to put that through where appropriate further down if required. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. Deputy Mayor.
As much as it is something I'd love to be able to do, I'm very happy that the CEO deals with that.
Councillor Dawkins.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those issues which can cause the most incredible consternation in the community. If you really want to have a long-term dispute that can turn into a feud and even perhaps a small war, this is one of the things that can do it. So absolutely all yours.
Any further contributions? Councillor Walker?
My experience on council over the 6-year period has been that generally CEOs have brought things to council when they've been more contentious, that the decision is not a straightforward one anyway. That is partly why you build that relationship with your CEO, that you would want, whether it's the general manager or the CEO, in those instances to reflect it back upon the council. And I have not really, I can't say that I've seen an instance where that hasn't happened. So, that augurs well for the future. There are times, and I note with interest, Mayor, you mentioned the Gorge chairlift lease. I'm not sure.
Landowner
are you suggesting that will be brought to the council in the future? Because it hasn't at present, but that's an example, I suppose.
Yeah, as in landowner consent can be delegated by the CEO.
Exactly. The CEO does have that delegated power. We've probably just given it to him again. But a perfect example where, any CEO who's at all aware of their roles and responsibilities would know that public land is something that is going to cause a community discussion. Yeah, so likewise with the plans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further contributions? Yeah, Councillor Pentridge.
I'm not sure whether I've got a problem with the word delegations, but I just don't think that it's fair on our new CEO to be put in this position. I mean, he's only a newcomer, and as my colleagues here have already brought up, the problems that he's going to walk into here, I'm prepared to, on this occasion, I will support, and I'll share it with him. Right? So I will sort of, if he's too busy, I'll sort it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Anything further to close, Deputy? Okay, to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, moving out of delegations to leases at 20.6. We've got the lease at the Kings Meadows Community Men's Shed. The recommendation is that by absolute majority, which we have today, that council decides to lease part of the island situated at 1 to 33. Okay, how do I say that? Councillor Harris? Nunaminia? Nunamina. Ah, yes, Nunamina. I thought it was going to be like Nunia business. Nunamina Avenue in Kings Meadows. Councillor Harris has moved. Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Yes, look, this is, I guess, part of the changes that we've been making across our community leases. And I notice the East Hamer Men's Shed is up as well. But the community men's shed at Kings Meadows, established in 2009 as a result of the Rotary Club of Youngtown and Kings Meadows joining with what was a community shed over at Masonic Care at that stage. And they have created a wonderful facility there that is providing services to the men of our community, and as all men's sheds do. And to us to do a lease for them for $340 a year is entirely appropriate. The benefit the community gets from this men's shed, and I'm sure all men's sheds, is much greater than that in just one day, let alone for the whole year. So I can only recommend this to all my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Now I've just got a question. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks. Just a clarifying question, and it pertains to both of these leases. We've been doing a great amount of work to align all of our leases, which is great and well received. Is there any differentiation when either the land or the building is owned by the organisation versus both of them being owned by the council? Sure. So what I mean is there a subcategory when one aspect of either the land or the building doesn't belong to the council.
Sure, thank you for the question. Duncan?
No, Councillor, there isn't.
Okay.
In terms of our ongoing work to reflect on the things that we do and how we do them, notwithstanding that we're heading in a great direction with leases and licensing, could that be considered into the future? I know there are other examples, for example, the Over 50s Club, a hall at Lilydale, etc., that are quite specific with regard to their ownership of parts, similar to these. It won't work retrospectively, and obviously it would be part of any new lease moving forward. Could that work be considered?
Yep, certainly. So we have the lease and licensing policy. It's currently under review, so that'll be coming to council in the coming months. We can address that or consider that as part of that process.
Great, thank you. Councillor Pentridge is the seconder.
Look, I would recommend that we all support it. I think they do a great job, and it provides a facility for, without being disrespectful, it's a bit like an adult crèche, and I think everyone needs somewhere to go. Not everyone's got a garage, so I think it's a great idea, and I'll definitely support it.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Any further contributions? Anything to close, Councillor Harris?
Nothing to close.
Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, another lease here with the East Tamar men's shed at 20.7. Recommendation is that council by absolute majority decides to lease part of the land situated at 308 John Lees Drive in Dilston. Somebody to move. Okay, Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, look, I stand to support this. I mean, I know there's been a bit of consternation in regard to this lease. I received some correspondence in regards to which I've taken up with Chelsea, and I think it also comes across to you, Nathan, in regards to various aspects of it, because this lease is not quite as simple as just the land, because it was the old fire services building which was taken over by the men's shed on our land. They also use our toilets, which I'm not sure that we knew that they used their toilets with no formal agreement in place. They were arcing up a little bit about paying $300 rent, but I think that's consistent with all the other leases that we're doing. I think they need to suck that up. I think they were cleaning the toilets, and they say we're now cleaning them and therefore it's going to cost us a fortune, but I understand that we're already cleaning the hall, for which the toilets are actually part of. It's going to cost us an extra $35 a week to actually clean the toilets appropriately. And I think also under our sort of vulnerable persons and children's things, safety aspects, we need to take control of those assets in relation to it as a result of that. So I'm very comfortable that we go down the line of where we are. I think we've got things about repairs and maintenance, which are probably irrelevant in the case that they actually own the building in which they're working, and therefore it's only their responsibility. So they're not our things, but it's consistent with what we're trying to do, is to try and uplift the upkeep aspects of the buildings that we own, so that the disrepair aspects that we've been talking about for some time are less likely to proceed into the future once we get ourselves back to regularising where they're at.
Yep. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Pentridge.
Thank you. I support the concept.
Thank you. Any other contributions on the table? Councillor Walker.
Yes, thank you. And I have had some discussions with community members in Dilston, more so in regards to the hall and its ongoing use. At the moment, that is available for lease by the community, by the council. I note that there are other communities that are interested in taking a more active role in the management of those facilities. And I suppose in a case like Dilston, you have a growing population, quite a substantial population in that northern area of Launceston municipality, but they don't have much of a town centre. They don't have much of a gathering place at all, really. In fact, we don't have reserves in the area. I think there's one state government reserve at Swan Point. Humbug Point? No, I forget what it's
Let's not
called.
get caught in the details. Let's stick to the lease.
Yep,
let's stick to the lease.
That's okay. Yes, and point of order, well taken. Thank you, Deputy. The point being, there's an ongoing relationship between the men's shed and the hall, and I think it needs to be recognised that although they may get a benefit from the council, there's also an aspect by which our assets are being monitored and looked after by their presence there. So that was the point that I'm so glad my deputy hurried me to make.
We all are. No. No, thank you for that. Okay. Any further contributions? Anything to close? Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? It's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Leases with the Aquatic Centre Cafe at 20.8. The recommendation is, by absolute majority, the council decides to lease part of the land situated at 18 High Street, Launceston, known as the Launceston Leisure and Aquatic Centre Cafe. Somebody to move? Councillor Dawkins. Seconded. Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. Yes, it's been workshopped. We understand that other people applied and it was quite close. But is it Dole Proprietary Limited,
Yes.
the current occupiers of that very successful business and very much well-loved business? Very hard to walk into the aquatic centre and not see tables full of food. I mean, it really is a part of the offering there. So congratulations to them and I wish them all the very best.
Thank you. Councillor Pentridge.
I have to endorse what Councillor Dawkins has said. I think why change it? They're doing a good job, so we should be supporting them.
Great, thank you. Contributions around the table? Nothing to close? Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? Oh, that's all councillors present. The motion is carried. You're very quick there, Councillor Guy. Okay, at 20.9, waiver of fees, Launceston Aquatic Centre. Recommendation is that council retrospectively waives fees for casual entry at the Launceston Aquatic Centre for the period of Friday the 6th of December and to Sunday the 8th of December inclusive. Somebody to move? Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
I only moved the motion because I was just interested to say if we actually don't pass this today, what actually happens? You're going around and collect the money from those that came on that day?
I don't know. Councillor Harris?
Yes, it would be interesting. Yeah, this was because we had the Basin Pool and the Lilydale Pool both out of action at the time, and so I guess an executive decision was made to open up the freeze, and now we're just rubber stamping that particular decision, one that I agree with, and in fact was very well received by the community. I must admit I had quite a lot of feedback on this, much more than I expected.
Oh, good. Excellent. Any further contributions? Anything to close? Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? So all councillors present, the motion is carried. 20.10, we have a monthly financial performance report. The recommendation is that council notes the report outlining both capital and operational results for the periods of for the period ending 30th of November. Somebody to move? Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor, anything to contribute?
Again, I think it's covering a sort of running a similar trend to what we've expected. We've been getting good savings in regard to our labour, which is a good and a bad thing. Obviously, it helps our bottom line, but not necessarily the level of work that the workforce have to undertake in relation to that. Clearly, we've got some rates we're down, but usually supplemental valuations and things like that will change that and bring that back into where we sort of do things. And I guess the substantive ones are probably the loss of revenue from interest in that we don't have as much in the bank as we originally had. As we sort of budgeted to have, and secondly, sort of some of the return from the investments that we've got in the Launceston Airport and the Taswater are not quite as high as what we budgeted them to be. So I guess there's a couple of downers in regard to that, but at the moment we're still going along very well in relation to budget. Clearly what I'm looking for at some stage in the future is as close as we can to say, okay, what's permanent, what's not. And I appreciate that's not easy to do, but I think that's something we really need to get to from the perspective of saying, yeah, it's 1.3, we expect it to be 500,000 rather than that because of the things they're going to catch up. So anyway, I think it's still good news from our perspective that we're actually travelling in a profit where we were budgeting to be in deficit. So just I would accept the report and move on.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, any further contributions? Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? It's all councillors present. The motion is carried. I'm going to move both of these together at 20.11 and 20.12, which is the Correspondence Director, Local Government Model Guidelines for Unreasonable Conduct with Council, and Correspondence Acting Executive Director of the Office of Local Government around the Local Government Policy Reform Program. Somebody to move both. Councillor Dawkins, and seconded by Councillor Gibson. Councillor Dawkins.
Yeah, thank you. Both of them are noting correspondence. as has been indicated, we did meet with the Minister for Local Government this week, and it was inspiring to listen to him speak about the way he has matured his understanding of local government reform. So I hope that all those involved in local government can do the same, and we can work toward a place that delivers for our community in a more sustainable way.
Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Gibson, anything further to contribute around the table? Putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motions are carried. Well, one motion, because it was two. 20.1, we have the Chief Executive Officer Network. 21.1, quarterly report from the CEO. The recommendation is that we receive the report. It is for the period 1st of October to the 31st of December. Somebody to move. Councillor Harris, seconded. Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you. Another report showing what the CEO's been up to and some of the areas that he's been in his last 3 months through to the end of December, including the travel to Western Australia and meeting with many, many people along the way. Just the one bit that I thought was interesting in it, and I'm just trying to find it, having stepped over it, is the City Heart Place plan and where we're at with that, because if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually a member of the City Heart Committee that has never met. And I look forward to the CEO perhaps calling a meeting of that committee so that we can perhaps have some further discussions about City Heart and where we're going with it. But other than that, a good report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge? Any further contributions? Nothing further to close. We'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 21.2, we have the report on the City of Launceston's 24 Annual General Meeting. Recommendation is that Council, in respect of the Annual General Meeting held on the 12th of December 24, notes the published motions passed at the meeting. Somebody to move. Deputy Mayor has moved, seconded by Councillor Dawkins. Deputy Mayor, just noting what we're going to discuss in a moment. Thank you. And nothing further as well, Councillor Dawkins. Anything around the table? To the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 21.3, we have Notice of Motion, Annual General Meeting. Opening it up to the public if there would like to be any speakers to 21.3 before we get to the recommendation. Anything further?
Thank you. I'd like to speak, obviously, to support this. The reason is it's the signage. I know officers speak and they're supremely confident. They say that they have a clear understanding of the rules around the operations of these e-scooters, personal mobility devices. I'm sure they do, but it's the public and the users, not just of the hire and ride, but the owned privately scooters. The signage that the state government had brought the legislation to control them and let people know where they can be ridden is a different sign in style. It's wouldn't necessarily be connected to the cycling signs and the other prohibition signs around the city. I wouldn't ask that they be touched. It's completely, the areas are different and they don't relate. There's a particular symbol that the state government has as a rule that they wrote just for the PMDs. And that's what I'd be looking to see the council utilised around the city so that people know where you can and can't use them. It removes that any confusion when someone sees someone riding. It's good to know, and you don't ever want a member of the public getting involved and telling someone where they should and shouldn't be using these scooters. So this, to avoid any confusion, I would ask and clarify that my intention really is that you use those state government signs where they're applicable and not connect them to the cycling or the other activities of smoking and other prohibited signs. But I'd ask you to consider this thing.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The recommendation is that the City of Launceston review the rules and signage as they relate to the operation of PMDs and e-scooters in the Launceston CBD. Moved by Councillor Harris. Seconded by Councillor Gibson. Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to Robin, to Mr. Smith for bringing this to our attention. And it is quite correct. There is a lot of confusion both in the public and also as parents, I think, of e-scooters, where they can be ridden and by whom. And I think it's really important that we do get some very clear definitions out there, because what many people don't realise is that they cannot be ridden on a road that has a dotted line down the middle, which is part of the state law, and hence we see that, and particularly we see it all, not only in Launceston but in other parts of the state as well. So getting this for Launceston, getting our own house in order, I think would be a very good place to start. But I think it's something that all councils probably need to have a look at, because the rules around e-scooters are quite specific, as they are for age and power limits. And they, by and large, and the wearing of helmets, by and large are being ignored by the public through their ignorance. And so I think this is a really important start. It's certainly not going to be the end of it, but I do congratulate Mr Smith for bringing this to our meeting. And I do hope that our fellow councillors do support this, because we have to know, and people need to know, that you've got to get off your scooter when you enter a certain geographic area. The hire scooters, it's somewhat easier because they have geo-fencing, but those that are bought privately have no such geo-fencing, and people just ride them anywhere. And that's really where the signs need to be obvious, unambiguous. Get off your scooter. You're in an area where it's not to be ridden on the footpath or the roadway. And that's what we really need to get on with this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks. What I appreciate with regard to the process is that after the AGM, it allows then councillors to receive a really detailed officer report with regard to the suggestion or motion that's been carried. In this instance, the detail is there, and I think the work can be undertaken as is documented, and as Councillor Harris says, will be quite useful, I think, to be able to really redefine and instigate what is intended for that particular rule.
Great, thank you. Further contributions? Councillor Walker?
Yeah, just to reiterate, I think that consistency of signage and, looking for examples where that has occurred, whether it's on a state level or elsewhere, I think is partly the important thing too, bearing in mind the difference between the geo-fenced areas and the private scooters, which just seem to be more and more of them all the time now. Riding across the lawn at the gorge or wherever it might be, you do see scooters popping up everywhere, powered devices, PMDs. So, the consistency of the signage, I think, will be really important.
Thank you. Any further contributions or anything to close? Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. That motion is carried. Do we have Duncan here still? So we're just looking at 21.4, which is a notice of motion around making a bylaw for early discount provisions for parking infringements. Before we get to public consultation or the recommendation, we just have some legal advice around the process here. Thanks, Duncan. 21.4.
So the motion is written, it can't actually be carried forward with. That's because of the provisions actually require the council to form an intention first. Where it does not, it's invalid. So you can vote for it, it's not illegal, but at its highest it would be indicating that you want something to come back later. More likely, it doesn't mean anything.
Thank you for that clarification. We've got a question. Councillor Gibson?
Thanks so much. Really appreciate all the comments by the team leader parking. What's not contained within the report is the work that we were already undertaking in response to Councillor Kai's request that a body of work be undertaken to look at the introduction of those staggered fees. So I absolutely appreciate all the justification, appreciate the work, and in some cases, sadly, the abuse that officers have received. But what the report doesn't capture, which is outside the work of team leader parking, is what we thought was happening. So is that work still happening or isn't it?
Yeah, I've got the note here that at a future workshop there will be a review of all of our parking and an update around what it would look like for that bylaw and parking in general around what that review is coming forward. CEO, do you have any further explanation than that, or?
No, thank you through the chair, and thank you, Councillor Gibson. That is absolutely correct. There will be a workshop, which I imagine we certainly will be covering off on those details. In terms of the date, I can take that on notice and circulate what date the workshop has been scheduled.
So if we were to follow legal advice and let it fail, this work is still going on regardless. So I'm happy to keep going with questions if required, but yeah, Deputy Mayor?
I think as it's been explained to me, a bylaw takes, I think it's got to be done by way of bylaw, is that right? Correct. I think what Councillor Kai and I think I have also raised the issue with, I think we unintentionally, or we didn't understand what we actually signed up to, because I think the issue was having consistency between the on-street and off-street penalties. At the moment we've got, and it's only not for the people who are trying to do the wrong thing, and I appreciate the statistics that are in there. It's really those people who are rushing to the swimming pool because they've got to get their kids to a lesson and just forget to do it. And that's a really huge penalty for them to pay. I was trying to get consistency with what we were doing on street as to off street. And to me, because we started this process some time ago, and I'm told it takes a year or so to get there, I'm just disappointed we are not close to getting there. So that's what I really would like to see, is this done with some speed, because it does take time.
Continuing questions as things this hasn't been moved or seconded.
Question, just in regards, I suppose, a point of order in a sense, that then are you suggesting that the recommendation should be that the City of Launceston forms an intention to make a new bylaw, or some change to the wording there rather than actually makes a bylaw? Would that suffice legally?
No, it wouldn't. It would tick that box, but there's a number of uncertainties in the way that it's written. There's, with respect to Mr. Smith, the way it's written, we can't really bring it forward to do anything. So the risk is too great to proceed in that way. So if I just give you an example, it doesn't talk about the current bylaw and whether it would be repealed. So you'd have two.
Okay. Question, Councillor Kai?
Yeah, so what we've brought forward early, pretty much straight after we've passed it, is still going ahead. You're still looking into getting the bylaw changed to give the discount, correct? But do you have a timeline as to how long that's going to be taking?
So the first step is for council to form, the first formal step is for council to form an intention in the provision that I've at section 156. We're ready to go with that. We just need a clear direction from the council. And so that's got a number of different things that need to be considered in coming to that decision, which is the workshop that the Mayor has mentioned. We'll discuss those and then the council can form a view how it wants to proceed.
A question?
Question, could I move an alternate motion that notes the intent of the instigator of the motions, notes the intent and seeks to formulate a path forward as an alternate motion?
What's
Would
the
that
cleanest way to do
suffice?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. So in clarification of your question, Duncan, legally, what's the cleanest way to do this in your professional legal opinion? Withdraw it?
Yeah, to vote against it, because it doesn't. It's not going to capture, even if you support reintroducing the discounts, it's not going to capture what you want to happen.
Further clarification, CEO?
Thank you. Through the chair, if I may just perhaps provide some clarity on what I think I'm hearing from around the table here, is I believe there's probably some general intent around what has been put forward here by Mr. Smith at the AGM, perhaps to ensure we're not looking to make policy on the run respectively, with some complications as outlined by our legal team, and knowing that we're already doing some work in the parking space and reviewing parking more broadly at the City of Launceston, further evidenced by the motion passed earlier, which was Councillor Walker's motion. Should it be an option perhaps that we fulfil that motion, which we already know is going to come with a report, which is reviewing all of the parking within the CPD of the City of Launceston, which our team is already working on. That will be presented to a workshop in the coming few weeks. We can get the date as per Councillor Gibson's question earlier. And I think that would then be the right opportunity to facilitate a more meaningful discussion around parking, including some of these options as presented by Mr Smith, but also other options that may also be brought to the table rather than trying to facilitate solutions one by one. Probably much easier to do it more holistically.
Councillor Walker, are you asking a question or are you moving?
Question.
Okay.
Can we move to put the latest motion on the table to defer it?
Then it comes back in its current form.
Well,
No, we haven't moved it.
no.
Clarification?
That is true. The motion will lapse. And secondly to that, Councillor Harris, someone may wish to simply move to receive and note the report, full stop.
Can we just defer it? It can come back, defer it pending a report. Not just defer it and do nothing.
Someone just procedurally withdraw it.
Still going to come back. Yeah. I just don't think we should vote against it because then we're really putting ourselves. We accepted the motion at the AGM and now we're voting against it.
No, we didn't accept it at the AGM. We accepted that we would discuss it. We didn't accept it. We voted to discuss it. We didn't vote that it was something that was going to be voted through. Councillor Gibson?
If indeed this motion was to be lost, because procedurally it says following the annual general meeting, the motion is to be considered by the council. We've heard on record, notwithstanding the body of work that's going to be put to councillors with regard to parking, that the explicit request of Councillor Kai from 9 months ago is going to be brought back to councillors, which will fully address what the motion requests. So explicitly, can I ask, is it still the intent that the work that councillors was believed would be presented to us, which would include a review of that bylaw, as included by the motion from the annual general meeting, and notwithstanding the comments from the parking team, is going to come back to councillors for consideration at the future date, which the CEO has suggested is the case?
CEO?
Yes, that is correct.
So if I'm looking for somebody to move or somebody to procedurally withdraw.
I'll leave the motion pro forma.
Okay. Okay. Any further conversations? Any further contributions? Okay. All those in favour? So all those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. We'll put that as part of our learning modules as we go forward. Okay. Oh, yeah, lost. Okay, 21.5. The fun keeps coming. No, don't get too excited yet. We've got more. Notice of motion around the promotional advertised free parking available 7 days a week, with the recommendation being that the City of Launceston establishes a consistent approach to its promotion of offering free parking at 3:30 p.m. till 5:30 p.m. Quickly, Mr Smith, if you wanted to reiterate what this is to achieve, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's something to mention is it's not just a sign that's referred to by the officer. There are many signs on business windows that have been issued around. They carry the council's logo. They're issued by council and what was City Prom is now Launceston Central. The officer talks about aligning the initiatives on focusing re-engagement CBD following school hours. That was a consideration when in 2008 when the promotion was started. In 2008, when it first ran, they did recognise that the car park was then open Saturdays, but not Sundays. But for the benefits of the marketing, it says, even though Saturdays is not recognised as a school day, it's decided to include Saturdays to make marketing the trial more effective and less complicated. So the same, I would argue, applies to Sunday. It also notes in 2008, when they ran the trial of the free parking, this is an important in providing consistent services to users of the facility. The consistency was regarding it always being available. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Somebody to move. The Deputy Mayor's moved, seconded by Councillor Walker. Deputy Mayor?
A consistent approach is always appropriate.
Fantastic. Councillor Walker?
Yeah, I look forward to how this can be instigated.
Thank you. Any further contributions? Nothing further to close. Putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, so we've got some reports to note here as well. So status report of notices of motion 21.6. Recommendation is that we receive the report. Somebody to move? Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Dawkins.
Yeah,
Deputy Mayor.
This is a great initiative, so thank
Cool,
you.
isn't
So
it?
it just keeps track of it. There's a lot to keep track of at this point in time. And I guess that what we're hoping is that over time this will dwindle down. There's a lot of completed ones on there which will disappear, and this, because this is the first report of its nature, makes the length that it is. So thank you for doing that. I think there's obviously a bit of work in there, but certainly from our perspective, we think things are getting done once we've agreed to do things. We just don't know sometimes, and it gets out of our head. So I think this is great to keep a rolling report on it. And a status update on various things as we go through. So that's good. Look forward to seeing that going into the future, a much more contracted report because it'll be all done.
Councillor Dawkins.
No, nothing more to add.
Contributions around the table? Councillor Gibson and Councillor McMahon.
Thanks so much. Of course, this isn't a new document. It's just provided in a new format. It's something that's been picked up from previous administrations, from the workshop. What I think this does is ensures the accountability from the community's perspective to see how projects that have been initiated around the table come to fruition. One of the things that I've heard councillors speak about is the want for joint ownership and collaboration on particular items, and I think this further enhances that as well. So really appreciate it being copied and pasted and put into this public arena.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon.
Just a point of order on the report. The actual motion that I brought to Council, reinstatement of the state government's financial contribution to the Active Launceston program. In the progress, it actually states that that funding was received, but it never was.
Okay, we can follow it. Councillor Walker.
It is good to see it in this format and to see it in the public eye as well. This is the interface between councillors who are elected by the public and effective policy and outcomes by council. I know that I have a couple of long-standing notices of motion there that I'm quietly agitating for, and I'm sure a few other councillors note that too. But this is the only place, in a sense, where councillors get that direct opportunity to influence outcomes. And it does need to be monitored. I'm sure we all do that in our own way. And, there's also, of course, we have our committees, but work needs to be done in that area as well, where notices of motion can come through the committee structure, so that there's a sponsored motion can come forward. I also like the idea that councillors can co-sponsor. For example, I know through you, Chair, Councillor Dawkins and the Deputy Mayor did co-sponsor a Clean Air Initiative motion quite a while ago. There's no specific provision for that in the Act. Generally it is a councillor, but I would like to see that this council publicly is demonstrative in the ways that we do work and can work together. Rather than individually putting out motions, I think sometimes we could find a collective way of doing that. It would be good.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Further contributions? Anything to close, Deputy? Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? It's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Status report on council decisions at 21.7. Recommendation is that we receive the report. This is from the 7th of September 23 to the 12th of December 24. Somebody to move? Councillor Dawkins. Seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Dawkins.
Likewise, this is an excellent table to get across some of the non-statutory items, and I think there's another couple of clauses there of things that are not included, but the ones that are included are very important. So it just goes to show the breadth of the work that council does, and I look forward to seeing more of these reports.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Harris.
Yes, like Councillor Dawkins, it's good to see just how much we have got through and just how things have changed, but sometimes you forget what has actually been put there. And I look forward to receiving these on a quarterly basis, I take it is the intention.
CEO.
Thank you through the Chair, Councillor Harris. At this stage, we intend to do it at every council meeting to ensure accountability remains at the forefront.
So every 3 weeks, thank you.
Any further contributions? Anything to close, Councillor Gibson? Councillor Dawkins? Okay, to the vote. All those in favour? All councillors present, the motion is carried. We have no late items that have been identified as a part of this agenda, so we will look to move into closed council at 23. Recommendation is that council moves into closed council to consider the following matters: confirmation of minutes, 2 tenders, and councillors' leave of absence. Somebody to move that we go into closed. Councillor Harris and Councillor McMahon. All those in favour? It's all those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We're moved into closed council.
Okay, councillors, we're back online and in open session. If somebody please may approve and move that this table is what was spoken on in closed council. I've got Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor McMahon. All of those in favour? All councillors present. The motion is carried. We close the meeting at 4:31 with the next meeting here on the 13th of February in the council chambers.